All right, welcome everyone. This is the latest in a series of LinkedIn lives that we've been doing. Also YouTube lives that we've been doing. These live streams have been quite successful, and thanks for everybody who's been joining us on these. Today, I have the pleasure of having Prabhat join us. He's been working on identity and access management for the DevRev platform, along with our zero trust architecture at large. So, welcome, Prabhat.
Hi, Ahmed. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So we've got, I think, a pretty good set of topics to talk about in and around not just identity in an overall cloud native work management solution, but then also how we've elevated that experience by incorporating agentic behavior. That means to say, using the same identity and access management principles and applying them in an agentic realm. That means to say that the relationship between how humans can interact with agents and also delegate responsibilities to agents, and how agents themselves can have identities and a sense of permissions that are sort of inherent to the agent itself and the skills that they carry. So it's a very complex and I think very interesting topic that hopefully we can demo some things and have a nice dialogue. But then there's a flip side to it as well, which is about how we actually use agents to actually drive identity and access management configuration, which I think is a very interesting topic as well. So hopefully we touch on both of them today.
Yeah. So let me give some background. So if you take last 2 decades or so, so we've seen how the IAM domain transformed significantly to address the need of the evolving landscape of cloud computing, SaaS, and then we've seen a proliferation of APIs and mobile apps, then microservices and cloud native workloads. And then today we talk about AI and agentic workflows. So whenever we discover or find better ways for communication between users and systems, and also between systems, so that itself naturally adds a layers of complexity to IA. So even today, like with the proliferation of agents and adaptation of agentic workflows, so that itself brings more challenges to the IAM domain. Not just challenges, I would say. That itself would demand a shift in IAM, the way we think about IAM construct. So it'll demand a shift.
Yeah, I know, exactly, and I know that you've all often thought about securing traffic and identity management north-south and east-west, meaning north-south, and then of course east-west became very prevalent in sort of this cloud era that we've been in over the last 10, 15 years, because you had so many different microservices and gateways, resolvers and routers, and sidecars and many other constructs that required us to think more deeply about east-west communication. So I think this is just one more sort of layer in that journey that we've been on over the last few decades, as you said.
That's right. Yeah. So that's where so there are a lot of things that we can learn from securing microservice deployment. So there are similarities as well as differences, and then again, the shift or the demand for a shift we see in the IAM domain because of these agentic workflows. So it is twofold. One is there's a demand for the IAM providers to use agents, like how you build IAM workflows using agents. So that's one area. Then the other one is you need the support of IAM to secure the agentic workflows. So those are two prominent areas we see with this new adaptation of the AI agents.
Yep, I totally agree. So if you want to maybe pull up maybe a microservice architecture diagram or something else that can help us sort of visually think about this a little bit more. And while you're bringing that up, I'll just mention that I think a platform like ours, we've embraced sort of identity providers, and you can bring your own identity provider when you're using our system. That's really not where we focus on creating value. But what we've done is effectively said that no matter what identity provider you're using, we just want to make sure that as it pertains to being able to get work done as an individual through workflows or now through agents, we want to make sure that we're able to give you all the right fine-grained controls in order to get the job done with the highest degree of safety and security.
Yeah, that's right. Like, I guess you can see my screen. Yeah. So this is a blog I've written a couple of years back, which explains how we secure DevRev microservice deployment both north-south and east-west. Yeah, so there are a lot of things we can learn from the microservice deployment when it comes to securing agentic workflows. And like whenever like you focus on securing system, the first thing that you would worry about it, what are the communication patterns, what are the interactions between the components in a system. If you take a microservice deployment, we see three key types of interaction patterns. So one is the users. So users would interact with microservices via an API gateway. So in that case, the microservice should be aware of the user context. Then the other use case is one microservice would need to access another microservice just by being itself. So this is service interactions. So the downstream microservice has to pass its service context, and the upstream microservice should know how to validate the service context of the caller. You validate, see whether this is coming from a trusted client, trusted downstream service, and also it can perform fine-grained access control. That is second pattern. The third pattern is a downstream microservice can access an upstream microservice on behalf of the end user. So in that case, the downstream microservice has to pass its service context as well as user context. Then the upstream microservice needs to validate both the context, and also it needs to evaluate its access control policies against both the context. It needs to check, can this microservice make a call on behalf of this particular user? So those are three key patterns that we see, and probably we can go into details as we move on. And when you implement these patterns in a microservices deployment, DevRev, we have followed zero trust network principles. So any request coming to a service, so zero trust network principle at high level is like you don't trust the network. So if you don't trust the network, what would that mean? Any request that come to you, you'll validate it. So that's what we do. We use Istio service mesh. So any request that comes to a microservice, we authenticate the request, then we authorize the request. So those are the key things that we can, like, key communication patterns that we see in microservices. And then again, like if you talk about service context, the microservice will have its own identity. So if you take the DevRev deployment, so we are using Istio mesh, Istio service mesh, and it's on Kubernetes on EKS. So whenever we spin up a pod, so Kubernetes assigns a service account. Then with Istio, so Istio will create certificates. So those certificates are being used to establish trust between two pods. It will carry the service identity. And on top of that, we build another layer. So this is similar to what Spiffy does. So whenever we spin up a microservice in our platform, it will talk to our security token service and will ask, who am I? So that call will be authenticated with MTLS. Then STS will provision a JWT to that particular service, which will carry the service context. So whenever this downstream microservice talks to the upstream microservice, that context will be passed.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm glad you brought up zero trust, because that's exactly the principle that I think we want to extend into sort of this agentic world. And I think the parallel that at least I see is that as we go from sort of what I would call this traditional cloud native SaaS 1.0 world, which is already quite modern, in the context of business software, to an increasingly agentic world, what we're going to find is that many of the principles that we held firm in this cloud native world, as it pertains to microservices, are going to have to be passed along to these agents. So here you were talking about microservices communicating with this token service STS in this diagram in order to get a JWT token. And in the future, I think what we would find is probably similar interactions in order to uphold zero trust principles with agents as well.
That's right. Yeah, I can share one difference between these two. Like if you take a microservice, so it's a long living process. Tokens being provisioned to this microservice, the service context or the token being provisioned from STS to the microservice, that could be long lived. But when it comes to agents, so agents are not long lived. Right? So the tokens that we provision to an agent should be short lived, and it is mostly driven by a delegation model. we can talk about that later when we talk about the
Yeah,
agentic
absolutely. And let's maybe make that shift. So we'll shift to the agentic workflow. And you're absolutely right. When it comes to identity for the agent, it's going to have to be ephemeral. It's going to have to be a composable role. It's going to be composable in the sense
Right.
that it's what the agent's able to do, along with what the human's able to do and what the human's compelling the agent to do. Which is some combination of what the agent can do and would be willing to do on behalf of the human, and then of course what the human itself themselves are able to do it within the context of their roles and responsibilities.
Yeah, that's right. So the three communication patterns we discussed with respect to microservices. So we see the same three communication patterns in agentic workflows too.
Absolutely.
So the first one would be a user using a prompt talks to an agent. Right? So then the agent should be aware of the user context. With the second one, to address that particular request prompt from the user, an agent may need to talk to another agent or another system. So that is system calls. And also an agent may need to talk to another agent or a system on behalf of the end user. So that's the third thing. So all three patterns that we discussed with respect to microservices, same three patterns exist in the agentic workflows too. So maybe let's get into the demo.
Yeah, why don't you bring up the demo? And I think what I'll mention as you switch your screens is the fact that this delegation model that we're talking about, where today's authentication models understand authorization and authentication as it pertains to identities that exist in the system, but maybe not agentic identities. But what I'll mention is that because we have been building a workflow engine, a quite powerful workflow engine for the purposes of automations within DevRev for so long, what really fascinating piece is that all of that work that we did to create service identities and to create inherent roles and responsibilities for the workflows themselves, that comes in handy because agents are built on top of that engine, are going to inherently benefit from all of that capability. So agents themselves are going to have identities, just like humans have identities, because we've been building on top of that. So say something more about that as well.
That's right. Yeah. So I have created this IAM demo agent using the DevRev agent platform. So once you have access to the DevRev platform, you can create your own agents too. So at the time that we create the agent, at the point a user who's having access in our DevRev platform to create an agent, so at that point we create a service account to represent this particular demo agent, and that service account is attached. That's a static ID, and it is attached to this demo agent. And here in this case, so I have created the IAM demo agent, and it has these skills. So you can think about skills once again as a set of tools. So like the ultimate action will be performed by these tools, these skills. So LLM will decide which, so this particular agent will have access to the LLM, and based on the prompt, LLM will say, okay, use these skills. Then so there's an orchestrator which will orchestrate these flows, and then it will pick these skills, then it will execute.
And we've gone through, agent building in a previous live stream in great detail. So I think for anybody who wants to know more about it, they can watch that. And here we'll just simply say that there's an identity associated with this agent.
Right. Yeah. And the other part I want to highlight is, so the skills. So skills are like at DevRev platform, we use lambdas. So that's a short living process. So whenever this request comes, we spin up a lambda to run this one, and then it's a lambda which needs to talk to our platform to talk to the works.create if it is a create issue and perform the action. So in that case, that lambda has to get a token too. So first I'll show how this works. Then we can talk about which tokens we use at which stage.
Yeah. Thanks.
Right. So we have a set of skills and then the knowledge base. So let's ask something like let's say how do I enable?
And what's happening here is that this is a very, very simple agent just for the purposes of showing token passing and what a human token looks like and what sort of the service token might look like behind the scenes. Because remember, the token that Prabhat is using to interact with the agent is different from the token that the agent's going to use to actually interact and undertake some of these actions. So we want to be able to show that So that's what we're going to do here. And on the side, right-hand side, what we're doing is really just kind of using that as a playground to actually take actions in accordance with this agent definition that we see sort of in the middle of the panel.
That's right. Yeah. So when I interact with the agent, it'll carry my identity. So when I log into the DevRev app, so it has a token which represents my identity. So let's say, how do I enable SSO for my DevRev?
And that just happens to be a question. I mean, it's a question about single sign-on, but it could have been a question about anything. In this specific example, that just happens to be the type of content that we want action, some kind of response on.
Right. Yeah. So agent is able to find out these details because I have enabled, like I have given the agent to access knowledge base on behalf of me. So if you look at articles, if you go to the knowledge base, you'll be able to find out. So there's an article here which talks about the SSO setup. And only reason why agent could read this article because the user executes this action has access to this particular article. Otherwise, agent won't have access.
Yeah, and said another way, the agent may have access to all of the articles, but the person actually asking the question, like for example, Prabhat, may not have access to all the articles, and so there's some intersecting happening there that we have to contextualize.
That's right. It should be the way, like how you configure the agent. Like probably you can share a set of permissions with the agent itself, irrespective of the user. The agent will have access, or else in most of the cases, the agent won't be able to do anything what the user can't do. Right. So it can only do some sort of things that the user can do because it always access these skills on behalf of the user.
So Prabhat, I do want to double click into the tokens that we passed along in this case. But before we go there, maybe just curious if you can say a little bit about fine-grained access controls, because I know that in sort of the general user identities, we do provide some pretty sophisticated fine-grained access controls. So maybe you can just say a little bit about what we offer there, because it's going to come in handy in terms of this delegation model. Because if we have increasingly fine-grained access on behalf of the customer or whoever is interacting with the agent, then that's actually going to be inherited. And then, of course, the follow-up question would be: do we support having fine-grained controls that are inherent to the agent itself as well as the user?
Got it. Yeah. So those are the three communication patterns that we discussed. So the agent itself, in the DevRev platform, we have a service account to represent agent. And when you spin up the agent, when a request comes from the agent, we create a short-lived token for that particular service account. And then we can delegate certain permissions to that particular service account. And also like at the point that we generate a token for the service account, we know who the end user is. So then that token, not the service account, that token will have access to perform certain skills on behalf of the end user. So if you take this for example, let me ask list all the issues. Right. So now the agent will find out, okay, so I need to access once again, do a hybrid search here, right? Or else use the issues knowledge base as a skill. So in that case, the actors token the agent gets should only have access to that particular skill. And also it is short-lived. Maybe I can show it too.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah. So this will do some API calls to the backend. So we are tracking so we audit all these actions. We audit who the user is, what's the agent. So all these things are tracked in our backend, are audited. Let's also say list all the issues assigned to me related to SSO. So this will also use the issue knowledge base.
And what's really fascinating is here, obviously, we're talking about, role delegation and composable roles and things like that. But what's really fascinating is that not only could we be using an agent to interact with it to retrieve information, but we can actually, in our system, use it to take action, right? So some level of actionable intelligence. And
Right.
when you take an action, what's really nice is, let's say you're taking an action against an issue, or let's say an opportunity, or whatever the construct is within your DevRev platform. When you take that action, we obviously keep that auditable log as an event timeline. And that event timeline is something that you can take a look at, within our UI. And it's part of the record metadata. What's really fascinating is that when you do that, not only are we going to be able to record the fact that the agent took that action, but we're actually going to be able to record who that action was taken on behalf of as well.
Right. Yeah. So what I have done so far, like I listed all the issues related to SSO assigned to me, and I got the issue ID of that issue, and then now I am going to get more details about that issue where with the issue ID in the prompt. So in this case, LLM will pick get issue and show me the details. Now let me check our Datadog logs and see, track the request.
And let's just say, for the sake of just double clicking into what you're showing here, let's suppose the user that wanted to get the details on that issue had access to the entirety of the issue except for a very specific field that perhaps they could not read. In that case, the agent would not have given them that information. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yeah. So that is right. That is not because of the agent. That is how we have designed our microservice security architecture. Like if you go back here to the microservice architecture diagram. So when a request hits this particular microservice, we have this policy decision point. It's the interceptor which intercept the request and enforce policies. So we have built a policy engine on top of OPA. So that will enforce fine-grained access control, and it will only like share the resources that you have access, and also if it, even for a given resource, if it has set of fields that you are not accessible, so those will be removed.
Awesome. Yeah, let's have a look at the tokens.
Right. Yeah. So I see the Datadog log. So I can't show you the entire Datadog log. So I'm just trying to make a screenshot of the relevant part. Right. So let me open that. Right. So this is the trace. So this basically this request will go through fastly.
And can you just zoom in a little bit?
Right. Sure.
And I guess the reason we're looking at it from sort of the back end is because this is not the token that's being passed on requests that are being made from Prabhat's computer. That's his user token. This is now a token that's being used behind the scenes that was actually created so that the agent could interact with services behind the scenes.
That's right. So this is neither my token nor the token of the service account. This is a token the service account has obtained on behalf of me. So that is why it says the token type is pad act as. And now if you look at the authorized party, right? So this refers to token ID. So this is a token ID of the service account. So when you service account, that represent the agent. So whenever, and it's for this particular session also. Now
and did you so the token type is what we call an act as token. So it's a act as personal access token. And when you looked at this token, how did you know that it was a service identity?
Right, looking at the authorized party, right? So authorized party has a token ID. So now we have a trace for this particular, like every request coming to our platform. So we have a trace for this particular token. So looking at the token ID, we can find out which user this token was issued to, who is the subject of this token. So that is available inside the platform.
Got it.
Another thing I want to highlight, like if you look at the issued at an EXP, expiration time of the token, now you can see the difference between these two is what, 300 seconds. So
300 seconds. So 5 minutes.
5 minutes. So this act as token is a short-lived token which gives the privilege for the service account to access a resource on behalf of the user with limited set of privileges only for this 5 minutes. So this is a short-lived token.
Very nice. And of course, that 5 minutes is something that we've configured and so on.
That's right. Yeah. So now let's see, like, so I mentioned that there's a service account created to represent this IAM agent. Let's try to find out the service account ID. Maybe we can ask from the agent itself. What is the service account ID of this agent?
Okay.
So let's see whether this works.
All right.
Right. Yeah. So it had access to that. So this is sharing the service account ID assigned to this particular agent.
Very
Right.
nice. Okay. And do you want to show us anything from your developer console from the browser itself, or no need?
I can show, but yeah. So you can see, like, yeah. Let's say repeat. So now you can see the request going to the timeline entries API. So this will carry my token. I won't, like, this is a production environment. So no, this is not production environment, but still I won't show my token. But
Sure.
I'll briefly see, yeah. So show part of the token. So this is the my bearer token, which I get from Auth0. It goes in all the requests to the agent. But yeah, so agent will use that token along with its service account token to exchange it to a pet actors token.
Okay, very nice. So we've seen the tokens that are being shown. We've seen the fact that these are short-lived tokens. We've also talked a little bit about fine-grained access controls and how even information that's being returned is going to go through a policy agent to make sure that any attributes, fields that you don't have access to or can't update, can't write to are obviously honored. We talked a little bit about composable roles. We talked about delegation, zero trust principles. Anything else, Prabhat, that you would want to discuss in this sort of early conversation around IAM and agents?
Right. Yeah. So if you look at this entire workflow, this is mostly internal. Like it's a closed system. Create issues, get issue, hybrid search, all are internal to DevRev APIs. It's within the system. So since this is within the system, we don't explicitly ask the consent from the user. So there's an implicit trust between the components. So whenever you use the agent, there's an implicit trust established, which says implicit consent being established, which says this particular agent can access my resources on behalf of me. So that is implicit. But when we extend this to external systems, so when we want to bring in like external MCP server, right? So now we cannot assume the trust, or we can assume the implicit consent. So that's where, like, a lot of discussions happening in this area. So how the user will give consent to this particular agent. So this is a normal OpenID Connect flow. Like, let's say I want to bring in my MCP server, which is in a different trust domain. So in this demo, everything is in DevRev trust domain. So now, let's say agent will discover skill. Sorry, LLM will discover a skill, like to address this prompt, I need this skill, but this skill comes from this particular MCP server. To access that MCP server, I need to have a token on behalf of the user. And you don't, the system will not have that token now. Now it will instruct the user, it will initiate an OpenID Connect flow, will take the user to the authorization server trusted by that particular MCP server. You authenticate there and come back and we'll get the token. And then again, if you look at OAuth, so OAuth right now, it has three parties: client, the user, and the resource server. So in this particular case, there's another actor in addition to this. So we have the client. So client is this app. And then we also need to carry the identity of the agent. So the agent is requesting access to this resource using this client. So that's kind of flow we need to build in the OpenID Connect flow. That's something under discussion in the OpenID Foundation and also under the OAuth IETF working group. which will decide which changes we need to bring into OAuth working, like OAuth profile, or else whether we need to bring like new spec around that. So
Yeah,
those
I'm looking forward to talking about that in sort of
Yeah.
a subsequent live stream. And I think, generally speaking, human in the loop and sort of interoperability between
Right.
agents, I think, is a very interesting topic that we should discuss.
Yeah.
Just a quick shout out. Obviously, again, a plug for our Discord community. Please join our Discord community. I think we're going to put the link here, and you guys can take a look at that. Also, as I mentioned earlier, DevRev on YouTube. Where you can find a playlist of all of our previous live streams, including this one in a few hours. So thanks again for everybody who joined us. One other thing, so I do want to talk about the human in the loop and the interoperability topic in a subsequent live stream. For about one other thing that I do want to talk about in the next live stream as well is how we start to see some of these roles and responsibilities, groups, caveats being described not through sort of the typical settings experience that we have of today, but actually having all of that become more and more increasingly conversational, so that we actually not only talk about identity as it pertains to agents, but we actually define identity through agents and conversational experiences. That, I think, is a very interesting topic.
Yeah. So that's basically like using the agentic workflows in IAM. So we've seen some like identity providers adding that and introducing their own MCP service. But that's something even at DevRev we are focused working on, like how we access groups and how we create an IDP trusted IDP for your dev work to enable SSO. So that's also we are working in like to make them more conversational rather like clicking and doing the settings.
Yeah, just making it more frictionless.
Yeah.
So I'm that's going to be a really great conversation. This one was also a very satisfying conversation for me, and hopefully folks who are watching this either live or later on, hopefully you appreciate the content that was provided. And if you have any questions, like always, you can join us on our Discord community. And of course, looking forward to more and more conversations with you, Prabhat. Thanks a lot. And thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Aman. Thank you.
Bye.